What's up, Home Slices? It's Kiara with Home Slice Adulting, coming to you with another installment of Driving Home. Thank you for clicking on this video, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. So let's get right into it. For those of you who don't know, Driving Home is kind of a blog series that I do on my way home from work on Fridays. Today is not just Friday, it is also payday. So the song that has been in my head all day is "Just Got Paid, it's Friday night." That has been playing in my head all day. And I you know, on Fridays, if you have a traditional work week where you don't have to work on the weekends, Fridays after work is like the height of your week, and that is what I'm feeling right now, the euphoria. On top of that, I got paid, so that's great, right? Anyways, so I want to spend my time today talking about Avengers, but doing a spoiler riddled version of my review of the Avengers. For those of you who don't know, I did an Avengers review last week because my boyfriend and I went to go see it on opening night. And I gave it a score of like a B+, like 88 out of 100. And I told you all that I have very specific feelings about what happened in that movie, but because it had only come out recently, I didn't want to spoil it for anybody. So I wanted to do a separate spoiler-riddled review of the Avengers Endgame. So here goes. Okay, so I have never really cared for Tony Stark, okay? His name should be Tony Snark, because that is all he does. He just has this little snarkasm thing going on that I don't really care for. Personally, I feel like I am sarcastic, but not obnoxiously so like Tony Stark. I just didn't really care for his style of humor. Didn't really care. I only saw his first movie. I wasn't really into Iron Man like that. So the fact that he died in the movie was okay with me. That settled well in my spirit, because I never really cared for Iron Man anyway. The only thing that was really endearing about him was how much he cared for Spider-Man, really. And maybe, is it Piper? Yeah, that was like really the only thing endearing about him, and he was really smart, I guess. But besides that, I just didn't really care for his personality. I didn't really care for, I guess, Robert Downey Jr.'s interpretation of Iron Man. He was just too sarcastic. Like, I don't know anything about the comic versions of these characters, but was Iron Man always as sarcastic as, you know, Robert Downey Jr. is? I'm not even sure, but for me, I just don't care for it. So the fact that Iron Man died was cool with me. Also, Black Widow, the fact that she died, that was cool with me. You know, super cool. You know, not to be an elitist or anything, but, you know, I have preference for the superheroes that are actually like superheroes. So Black Widow is a human spy, and like, that's it. Like, she can fight, she can shoot a gun, but she's like a human. And like, that's it. She doesn't really have superhero powers. To me, she was most useful when the Hulk was like out of control. And in Avengers, because the Hulk had himself under control, she was just like kind of useless. So I am okay with her not being around anymore, because she just like doesn't do it for me. Hawkeye is only like a half step above Black Widow as another human whose only, you know, contributions to the group is this super accurate bow and arrow shot. And I can only think of one time in the Avenger movies where Hawkeye like really tipped the scales. And I can't even remember which movie that was. It's when they were fighting against the other girl. I can't think of her name, but the girl that was dating Ultron, in one of the movies, she was actually a villain that was fighting against the Avengers. It might have been Civil War. I'm not really sure. But Hawkeye tipped the scales when they first encountered those two, her and her brother. So Hawkeye is only a little bit better than Black Widow. But again, he's like, I'm only human. Like, you know, that's their theme song. So, I'm glad Hawkeye was able to reunite with his family. Because, like, when all of his family disappeared, like, right before him, and he was like, where did everybody go? At the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh, that's sad. Can you imagine? What else? I remember sitting in the movie theater when everybody, you know, realized that Iron Man had died, and everybody is, you know, sniffling and upset, which is fine because I get it. People have attachments to these characters and superheroes. When Iron Man died, I was cool. The thing that got me, that made me tear up in the movie theater, was when Peter Parker went back to high school and reunited with his friend. I can't think of his friend's name, but when he saw Spider-Man and they like were about to hug each other, and you know, he was just so happy to see his friend and so shocked, that choked me up. That's when I was like, okay, y'all done made me cry this time. Okay. I never saw any of the Captain America movies, but I think it's cool that he decided to have a regular life and, you know, be with the woman he loves and have kids and whatnot. The Hulk, I hate that they really don't know what to do with the Hulk. That's what it feels like. Somebody told me that the Hulk actually gets to that point in the comic books where he's like hulked out but not angry like he was in Avengers. So if it was on purpose, cool, I guess. But the Hulk movies suck, and like they just really don't have a good place for him, especially since he's only like the second smartest person in the Avengers. The Hulk is kind of like Beast from X-Men. Beast got hands, you know, he can fight or whatever, but like his brain is the most important thing, you know, about him, which when it comes down to fighting might not be as glamorous as all the other stuff, right? But anyways, I enjoyed the movie, but again, there was like a lull in the movie where I was like, oh, this is so boring. Like, nobody's fighting, nobody's hitting each other. Like, come on, okay? Yeah, so Black Widow dies. Iron Man dies. I'm okay with that. Ultron, of course, because he died prior to what's his name? Prior to Thanos, you know, snapping his fingers, he didn't come back, so Ultron is gone. There was one thing that somebody brought up in a conversation that I was like, oh, you know what, that really doesn't make sense. So in the part of the movie that made me choke up, when, you know, Peter Parker returned to school and met up with his buddy, right? He was like, why is his friend still in high school? Because it's supposed to be 5 years later. And I was like, you know what? That doesn't make sense. So we all know that there was a 5-year time lapse between Thanos snapping his finger and the remaining Avengers bringing everybody back. If time continued to go on for those people who stayed on Earth that survived Thanos snapping his fingers, then Peter Parker's friend should be 5 years older than Peter Parker and should not be in high school anymore. So that right there didn't really make any sense. The only way it makes sense is if Peter Parker's friend was also killed, but it doesn't make sense in the context that we saw them reuniting. Because if they were both killed when Thanos snapped his fingers the first time, then they would have been together in another dimension. So yeah, that didn't make sense. That kind of messed things up for me. And their whole theory on time travel, that was like a little mind-boggling. I watched a video yesterday of a guy explaining Marvel's theory on time travel. So yeah, because when when Nebula killed the past version of herself, I was like, well, why didn't she die? And their point was like, well, she died when Nebula killed her past self. She created a separate string of the timeline. She wasn't killing the previous version of herself. She was killing a different version of herself that existed in a different like dimension, in a different, you know, time span or whatever. So what else about this movie? I don't know. All I know is I enjoyed the movie, but it was not as good as I wanted it to be. It was not as action-packed as I wanted it to be. I wish Captain Marvel played a little bit of more of a role. But yeah. That's it. Everything for me was wrapped up in a pretty bow, especially since the people, you know, that I didn't really care for were the ones who died. So I understand how it could be devastating for some people, but for me it was like perfect. It worked out perfectly regarding my personal preferences. So that is my spoiler-riddled review for Avengers Endgame. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a great weekend. Peace out, home slices.